Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. Yes, from the world of cricket, South African cricket witnessed another blow as the country's sports minister decided to directly involve in cricket South Africans' affair. And Manchester United actually trounced Burnley 3-1 on Sunday. And yes, from the world of Grand Prix, Verstappen won Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix on Sunday. And yes, from the world of golf, Stewart King actually claimed his third RBC Heritage title on Sunday. And yes, those were the headlines. And yes, we definitely would want to start with the world of cricket. And yes, Pakistan actually managed to clinch their fourth victory on the T20 on Friday against the proteas. But yes, it has been a very tricky situation for them. Why is that so? Because the sports minister is now getting into the entire situation of handling the cricket affairs in South Africa, which is surely going to be one tricky subject to discuss. But anyways, to discuss more of this, we have Adrian all the way from South Africa. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again.
Great. So, Adrian, first things first, obviously, we'll talk about Pakistan clinching that victory 3-1 and the ODI side, and then obviously the 2-1 in the ODI side and 3-1 in the T20 side. So, besides the victory part, of course, there was some phenomenal performances. I would surely want to highlight those. But before that, I would want to ask this one specific question. The management is now, and the sports minister has finally decided to move into the affairs of the Cricket South African Association. What's your take on that? Because people have been asking this question, and a lot of South Africans are upset that why did the government allow them to, 5 main players to go to IPL and not be a part of this nationalistic, tournament that was Pakistan versus South Africa?
Yeah, so look, there's two issues there. There's the boardroom issue of South African cricket and the administration of the game. And I think government's hand was forced because they had a special general meeting on this past weekend, and the members' council voted against incorporating this new memorandum of incorporation. So this document would have allowed independent board members to be on the council, right, and would have allowed an independent chair on the council. So what has happened is there's an allegation that cricket has been captured by specific individuals in the right boardroom. And so government, in order to kind of deal with that, government decided to step in now after that special general meeting on Saturday. Government said, we are now taking control of the game of cricket. Right. And so Cricket South Africa, essentially what it means is that they don't have control of the game of cricket at the moment. It's now a government thing. Which a lot of, like, for example, the ICC would probably frown on that because no one wants politics in sport. And unfortunately, the government has been forced to take this action because of a few individuals that believe that they have an ownership of cricket and they know what's best for cricket in South Africa, which is unfortunate. Right. And then there's the issue of the selection of players and allowing players to go to the IPL. That has been a very contentious issue over the past couple of weeks. As you could have seen, those players would have made a big difference to the outcome of the T20 Series in particular.
Absolutely.
And so you have players like David Miller, Kagiso Rabada, missing, Quinton de Kock missing from the national team, which is so unfortunate because there was this deal that was signed between Cricket South Africa and BCCI. Obviously, there was financial arrangements within that as well. And just obviously, South Africa trying to please the BCCI as well. We're not wanting to upset them because, tours to India could rely on relationships like that. Right. And as Indian tours to South Africa and the other way around are quite lucrative for Cricket South Africa. So there's a lot of, monetary revenue expectations that come with decisions like that. But as you can see, that doesn't translate into the on-the-field performance. So we're missing practically half the team, as you could say, and the results are quite clear in the outcome, as we've seen.
Right. And to be honest, when it comes to, because if we really look at the whole situation, obviously it was an invitation sent over from South Africans to Pakistan to come join us. And even if you remember before this, Australia was supposed to tour, but then Australia decided not to, and South Africans were really upset. But then Pakistan obviously had South African coming over to Pakistan, performing, and then going back. And then obviously the invitation came from the proteas. The point is, it was a nationalistic, move to welcome others to their country. But on the contrary, allowing the players to head out to the IPL over this whole situation, I'm sure there would be a lot of more critiques and there would be a lot of more questions out there that are supposed to be answered. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why government now really wants to interfere in Cricket South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Pakistan did us a huge favor by stepping in when Australia decided not to tour in South Africa, and it's unfortunate that I think those agreements between Cricket South Africa and BCCI were made quite some time ago, even a year ago.
Right.
So I think South Africa, if Cricket South Africa would stood to lose perhaps financially if they had pulled their players out or upset the cart in any way, and if you remember, the last World Cup. 50-over World Cup in England, there was a similar issue with players being in the IPL just before the World Cup. A lot of players like Kagiso Rabada went to the World Cup very tired. They had been completely worn out, had a full summer of cricket, and then going to the IPL, and then going straight into a Cricket World Cup in England. Right. Kagiso Rabada didn't have any rest, and a lot of the key players didn't have any rest before the Cricket World Cup. So, questions have to be asked around, how do we manage players? How do we manage the IPL and allowing players to go, but not affecting the national team? I still feel the national team should be the priority, and it seems at the moment that the IPL is sometimes the priority for a lot of South African players, which is unfortunate.
Right. Anyways, I hope things streamline for them. Anyways, we'll surely want to talk about the matches itself. We'll talk about the last T20 match, of course, which Pakistan managed to take and clinch, to be precise, and obviously Fakhar Zaman managed to score 60 of 34 balls, and it was a tricky match, to be very honest, because of the fact that the unpredictability of Pakistan is always there. So what's your take on the overall T20 series that actually took place?
Yeah, it was an exciting series from a Pakistan point of view. I think again they continued their good form from the ODI series. They really played well. The batters at the top order, Fakhar Zaman, Imam Al-Haq, and of course the man himself, Babar Azam, they were just in supreme form throughout that series.
Right.
And it just showed the value of having a good top order and a solid top order that can play well together, that understands each other, and just the consistency of having a core group of players, which South Africa didn't have for that series. As you recall, the players that had left for the IPL, and then new players coming in. South Africa's team selection was a bit mystifying at times. They went in with 4 batters for the final T20 and a long tail. They were dominant with the bowlers in the lineup. So pointing from a South African point of view, team selection was called into question a lot. But I think Pakistan were just a class above the rest. Your batters in the top order were just so supreme to South Africa, anything that we could offer.
Right, and if we look back, I think the best T20 that was out there was obviously when Babar Azam managed to score 122 out of 59 balls, and Mohammad Rizwan was with him in the support of 73 not out from 47 balls. At that very day, Babar Azam was appointed, or he came up to the point of being the top world ODI batsman #1 after beating Kohli's 41-week streak. So what's your take? I think it was really, really magical, and that was Babar Azam's maiden century in the T20s, by the way.
Yeah, no, what a player, and I think we were blessed and actually so privileged to have him in our country when he did that and when he achieved that milestone in his career. And I think he'll stay at the top for a long time to come. And the more cricket he plays, the better he will get, and he will just dominate. He's such a class player. Seems to have every shot in the book. He seems to have so much time at the and he just made the South African bowlers and the South African attack just seem very ordinary. But it's just by sheer class, really. It's the best way to describe him. He's just a class player, and I think he showed it in South Africa on all formats of the game. And it was just really, really good to see on our soil and in South Africa. He's a wonderful player.
Right. If we talk about obviously the last match as well, I still think South Africans batsmen, the batting lot was spot on. Markram, to begin with, I think has been one of the phenomenal batsmen in the team. Not only that, one doesn't actually manage to do that as well. So what's your take where in the bowling side, because there were a lot of issues in the bowling side, and yes, we definitely missed facing Rabada and Nortje, to be precise, because when that is something, that is the South African lineup that actually fires up a great match against Pakistan.
Yes, I mean, if you come up with a really good batting lineup that Pakistan have against a very inexperienced bowling lineup that South Africa put out there, Magala and Williams, they're just starting their careers in T20, and they were kind of thrown to the wolves, really. I mean, coming up against, Fakhar Zaman and Baba Azam in your first couple of games,
right.
It's very intimidating. And I think, South Africa, yes, they were missing the experience of Rabada and Anrik Nokia,
right.
Really good players, even Lungi and Ngidi. And they just didn't have the experience and the expertise to deal with a batting lineup like Pakistan. It was just unfortunate. And I think, some of the team selection, as I said, was a bit of a question mark. They chose Andile Peshlekwaya in the team, but he didn't bowl in two of the matches. So that was a bit of a puzzling, scenario there. Why did you choose an all-rounder and then not let him bowl?
Right.
It was really some strange team selection, I must say, especially in the bowling department as well.
Right. But, even if we talk about having an inexperienced player, of course, because we definitely want the youngsters to join in, but you need to have a balance of the youngsters and the seniors, because they'd surely be learning from the seniors. I think one of the key factors was, even if Rabada was here, at least he would have been the right person to guide the rest of the bowlers to perform accordingly, right? But I think they were left in the middle.
Absolutely. It was, also remember Temba Bavuma wasn't on the field as well. He was injured as a player. So they had Heinrich Klaassen captaining the side, no Rabada there to guide the bowlers. Right. We would have seen in the first T20 when Magala bowled was it a 12 ball over. Right. There was no one there that was kind of guiding him, saying, calm down, settle down, let's get this right. There just seemed to be a lack of support from an emotional point of view, from a mental point of view for the young bowlers.
True.
And unfortunately, they had to deal with the match situation as it was. And as you could see, the outcome wasn't great. I think we conceded something like 16 extras
right.
in the T20 series, which is unheard of for a South African team, which has always been fairly disciplined in the bowling department.
I agree. Adrian, anyways, thank you so much for being a part of the show and discussing the details and the in-depth analysis. I hope things work out.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. So that was Adrian, and he did talk about Pakistan versus South Africa in a different way. Obviously, we definitely brought in the government side as well, because there were a few things missing in the South African teams. But anyways, Pakistan still managed to win and clinch that entire series as well. But anyways, we'll take a break, and once we're back from the break, we'll further discuss more sports coming up. We always see you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back after the break. And yes, surely before the break, we were discussing the world of cricket and the variation and the things that have truly happened in the world of cricket. But anyways, we'll definitely be switching over to the next news as discussed. So we'll talk more about football. And yes, there have been some victories and some defeats, and obviously some of them have been a draw. We'll be talking about that. And for discuss all of this, we have Ali with us all the way from UK. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I'll just start with the first match of the Premier League, the victory of Manchester United over Burnley. So we'll surely be continuing discussing more on the matches. What's your take on this first match?
I mean, it was obviously a strange weekend of Premier League football, with a lot of it overshadowed with what was to come on Sunday night. But I mean, it was a good victory for Man United. I think it followed a lot of what has happened for them this season, that you could see vulnerabilities in their performance. And obviously they conceded a disappointing goal to concede, and they were perhaps lucky with the initial Wood goal that was ruled out for offside. But Mason Greenwood is a very special talent, a very special young player coming through. And not just a special young player, a special player already, really, you must say. And it was two excellent goals from him that kind of really set them up for an important victory, and it looks fairly nailed on at this stage that they will finish second in the table.
Right. But even if you look back into the table, we were surely looking at a situation when Manchester City had already developed themselves as the top notch, and it was very difficult, and nobody could actually foresee, obviously, topping the chart against them. But now, if we look into Manchester United's performance in at least the last 5 matches or even more, how they've actually managed to secure that place. But obviously, they'll be sticking to the second spot on the Premier League standing. What's your take on if they had started off these victories way before the season started?
Well, I think you're right that they're not as good as Manchester City, and that most people wouldn't have expected them to challenge them for the title. Right. I think the disappointing thing will be that there was a time when the two clubs were neck and neck this season, right. And just it looked like Manchester United could be launching a serious title challenge. It kind of went off the rails would be too strong a word, but it didn't quite go to plan. They dropped a few points, and Manchester City just went on one of those runs that they're capable of, where they won so many games in a row and they just got an unassailable lead. So I think, like you say, second place overall would be a pretty good season for Manchester United, but at some stage they do need to take that extra step, and certainly historically, Manchester United would never be happy with second place. They would always be wanting to win. So, like you say, it's a very good run of form at the minute, and from their point of view, you would hope that it can be a sign of what's to come next season. But ultimately, we won't know until next season whether they can sustain it for a full season. And we've seen these runs, especially under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We've seen these runs before where they do look a very good team, where they get a lot of results, but unfortunately, one result can knock them off, and they've had too many games under him where they've flattered to deceive and not been able to break down teams, especially against often the smaller teams who will go there and defend and not let them play on the break and use their pace, which can be so devastating.
Right. But anyways, everybody's definitely going to opt for being in the top 4 to begin with. That's like the spot that they want. But yes, nobody would want to be on the second spot. Everybody would want to have that first spot. But anyways, we'll talk about the next match. We'll talk about Fulham managing to draw against Arsenal. What's your take on that one? Because Arsenal did not really have the best of the season themselves as well. So what's your take on that one?
It was a game that in many ways encapsulates the seasons for both. I think from the Arsenal point of view, it's hard really to see where the progress is and where they go from here. I know that a lot of people do think Arteta is doing a good job and that he has cleared out the squad to a certain extent. He's getting his own players in, but it's quite uninspiring, I must say, with Arsenal. I think it's hard to see what their sort of defined style of players, and like you say, they were underwhelming, and there's just not an awful lot to be excited about with them. You're very much projecting and hoping that this small thing can become a big thing and will be carried forward. As for Fulham, it was classic Fulham in the sense that you felt that they played well, you felt that they deserved more than they got, but that's sadly been the story for them all season. A lot of battling draws, a lot of draws where you think, well, if they can carry on doing that, they will be all right. But ultimately, they haven't been all right, and they're more than likely going to get relegated because they just don't win enough games. They have too many games where they play well, but all they can do is pick up 1 point rather than 3.
Right. But if we look at Fulham, obviously, on the charts, they're on the 18th number. But for them, even making this draw would surely keep them, let them have the bar higher, a bit higher. But on the contrary, if we look back into Arsenal's situation, I think there have been too many upsets, not only with Arsenal. There are so many teams, so many clubs that I would want to talk about, and I surely will talk about after we discuss the last match, that there have been so many variations of the ups and downs, and teams unable to perform to their maximum. So I'll just talk about one more match, and then we'll surely be discussing the table. So the next match that I want to talk about is obviously Wolves' victory against Sheffield United. What's your take on that one?
It's obviously Sheffield United to get relegated after this result, and they've really had a horrible season. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have seen that coming. Certainly, I wouldn't have expected them to be struggle this much after how well they did last season. For Wolves, it was an important win just because they too have had quite an underwhelming season, and I know they've got injury problems at the minute, and nothing's really gone to plan for them. But if they can finish this season reasonably strongly and at least bring some momentum into next season, we know that they do have some very good players, and that Nuno has been a very impressive manager since he came into the Premier League. So from Wolves' point of view, even though Sheffield United have been can't be the worst side in the division this season, I think it's still an important win, and when they haven't won that many games this
they've
season,
actually lost 26. This was a 26th defeat in the season, so I think they surely need to prove that, because obviously if they want to continue their journey into the World Premier League, we know how it works. They'll definitely be going a tier down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really quite shocking how much Sheffield United have struggled this season.
Right. So besides all of this, we'll just surely want to talk about the top four, obviously. And in the top four, I want you to firstly discuss Liverpool, because obviously the defending champions were unable to perform the way they should have. And what's your take on Liverpool's overall performance this season?
But I think Liverpool are very hard to read because they've had so many injuries, and obviously the injury to Van Dijk is very well publicised. They've their defence has been sort of ripped apart really, with Matip and Gomez being injured as well. I think it is important to say that if you do leave yourself in an area like centre back, like they did with selling Lovren and not replacing him, then you are susceptible to this. I don't think the injuries fully explain how poor Liverpool have been relative to how they played last season, and right. I think if Liverpool fans, I think they should be concerned. I don't think it's simply a case that you can just write it off as injuries and assume that things will get better next season. But like you say, it's just been such a strange season for them. It is hard to know whether this is the start of the end, and whether sort of the Klopp magic has run out. I would be reluctant to believe that. I think it's more likely to be a blip for Liverpool, but it is concerning just how far the standards have slipped, and how much we talk about the injuries at the back, but they've also just not scored enough goals. The attack hasn't looked as anywhere near as fluid and as dangerous as it was.
Right. So I'll surely just want to have one more question. What's your final take on how you see the top four? Who do you think would be, besides Manchester City and Manchester United, who do you think would be third and fourth at the end of the season?
I would anticipate Chelsea certainly getting a top four if you had to pick teams at the minute. I think the way that they have been playing since the new manager came in has been a positive. And they've by and large had very impressive results under him, and I think you can see that with the fact they're moving up the table. And I think if they were to win their game in hand, they would indeed move into the top four. Right. So I'd certainly think Chelsea, and then if you were picking teams at the minute, you'd want to say West Ham. They have been playing very well, but to be honest with you, if I had to pick two, I would be boring and say Chelsea and Liverpool. I just think that when it comes down to crunch time at the end of the season, they have the quality to come through and win games.
Well, I hope that goes that way. Thank you so much for being a part of the show and discussing your point of view in the world of football.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So that was Ali. He discussed obviously the football situation right now in the world of Premier League, and yes, there have been major ups and downs, and we surely talk about the top four of the season is actually coming up to an end. But anyways, that was from the world of football, and we'll surely jump into the world of Formula One. Yes, interesting update from the world of Formula One. Verstappen won the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix here on Sunday. And not to forget that this is registered as his first victory of the F1 2021 season. And Lewis Hamilton sided off into the Gravo while running second. Hamilton was back on the top five within the first 7 laps. But anyways, it is tricky when it comes to the world of Formula One, because it's all about the consistency, and you definitely have to keep your eyes on the track and ensure that you don't lose obviously the Formula One vehicle that you're riding. But anyways, that was pretty much from the world of Formula One. I'll quickly jump over to the RBS Heritage, which is the golf side. Yes, Stewart King actually claimed his 3rd RBC Heritage title here on Sunday, and he earned 1.27 million as the winner's check at the RBC Heritage. And Stewart King also entered the final round with 5 shot cushion. So I guess it was definitely his lucky day, and he managed to get himself that victory and clinch himself that victory. And Matthew Fitzpatrick shot 3, was under 18 to finish in a 3-way tie for the 4th. But anyways, congratulations to Stewart King for winning this, and that is how the world of golf runs. It doesn't matter what you do on the first day because it starts from Thursday, ends up on Sunday, but most of the fate that actually are sealed are on Sunday. But anyways, if you guys have to reach out to us, you can on a social handle, which is at the rate of Indus Sports. That basically works for Instagram and Twitter. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.